Hey, good Tuesday, everybody. Welcome back. Great to see you. Got an update here for you on a couple of big time weather systems working on through. One potentially in the tropics, and then multiple mid latitude cyclones likely to cross the lower 48, or at least portions of the lower 48, over the next week, bringing the potential for big time severe weather, snowfall, and rainfall. I'm going to break all of that down for you in today's video. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major in my junior year at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so. Hit that bell for the latest notifications. It's free. You don't have to pay to subscribe. So, again, one of the luxuries of YouTube. And like the video and comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Now, I will tell you to my regular viewers, going to do things a tad different today. Unfortunately, I spent about an hour before this kind of troubleshooting some technical difficulties, so that has really cut into my time before I have to get on to class. So this video is probably going to be a little bit shorter and a little bit more short, sweet, and simplified than normal, but should be back to normal tomorrow, hopefully. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and dive on into things because, again, we are on a little bit of a time crunch. So current satellite imagery out there, again, things remaining relatively calm for most of us, but we are beginning to see this uptick in kind of shower activity over portions of Central America. This is that Central American gyre that has led to already multiple storms this year, including Helene, came from this same general pattern, and it's going to potentially try to spit off another storm sometime later this week into next week. Other than that, across the eastern United States right now, I mean, all clear. We do have a bit of a warm front swinging on through the northern tier of the country, and that is bringing all that cloud cover and even some precipitation this morning to some folks. So, definitely watching out for that. And we'll take a look at that a little more in depth in a moment once we get to radar imagery. Now, sticking with the tropics, though, this is where we're going to start. And again, this is really going to be sweet and simplified. But we do have a 40% chance of development from the National Hurricane Center right here over the Southern Caribbean. So nothing has changed there since yesterday, still holding steady at 40%. And I think that's probably a pretty safe place to be at this point as we continue to kind of watch model guidance come in for this potential storm system. Now, we're going to go ahead and take a look at all of the potential ingredients that we would need for tropical development and then apply it to our current situation and, take a look. Do we have those ingredients for a storm potentially here in the Caribbean? Now, this is a wind shear map, so red is unfavorable, blue is favorable for tropical development. And you'll notice right now in that area, we're watching a lot of red on the map. So currently, the chances of development are quite low in the near term. But as we move this ahead into time, and once we kind of get into this weekend especially, and into early next week, you'll notice that red calms down a little bit more, and especially by about a week from now, blue begins to take over here in the Caribbean, which would be much more conducive for tropical development. And that's why we could see, some storm kind of get going here as we see some more divergence aloft and less wind shear. Again, that's going to allow this storm to kind of maintain a core and then potentially, kind of gain from what is already very warm ocean temperatures out here. Again, I know it's November almost, but the Caribbean is still plenty warm enough for tropical development. Don't let this time of the year fool you. In fact, we still have temperatures up near 30 degrees Celsius, and that is in the upper 80s for Fahrenheit. So, again, plenty warm enough to support tropical development in this part of the Atlantic, even if other parts of the Atlantic are beginning to cool down, as you would expect to see this time of year. But the Caribbean, again, still open for business here, and plenty of ocean heat content as well down there. Now, another ingredient for tropical development is moisture. Do we have moisture in the air? Well, currently, yeah. I mean, there's a good amount of moisture. Now, there is going to be some dry air that kind of forgets to, that attempts to infiltrate this part of the Caribbean. But overall speaking, a pretty moist environment, and it stays that way through really the entire time that this storm could potentially develop. And then you'll notice even a week or so from now, it looks even more moist than it currently is. So that's another box that we can kind of check off here in the tropics department. And when we put all these things together, you get the general idea that, yeah, conditions are pretty favorable. And I'd say that 5 to 7 day time frame, especially for tropical development to begin here. And our models agree. We'll take a look at the ensembles from the GFS This is early this week. This is tomorrow afternoon. Still nothing showing up. This is Thursday afternoon. Still not a lot showing up. But once we get into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday into this weekend, you'll notice a lot of our ensembles beginning to pick up on the idea of something kind of getting going here south of Jamaica. And a lot of these models get this pretty strong up into upper end tropical storm strength, maybe even lower end hurricane strength. And then the question becomes, well, where does it go? And that is kind of a tougher question to answer, but I will show you. A lot of our models generally pull this north. A lot of the GFS ensembles do here, and you can kind of see that. The general thought process right now is a stronger storm system would kind of pull it up north towards Cuba and maybe potentially get into the Gulf. A weaker storm system would likely move up near Hispaniola and then either get killed off as it runs into this ridge of high pressure or potentially ride this ridge of high pressure and then scoot back up towards the southeastern United States. So most of these tracks eventually bring this towards the lower 48 and the southeast, but in terms of intensity or impacts, we really just don't know enough right now, but we do still expect some sort of development. Again, that could be a weak tropical storm. That could potentially be a hurricane. And the best thing to do is kind of just come back and monitor it here with us, and we'll keep you up to date. But we'll bring this even 10 days out. And yeah, you'll notice we get kind of cattywampus all over the place here with those ensemble members. All right, I'm going to leave it at that for the tropics today because, again, not a lot has changed. And I think that's a pretty good summary of what we're looking at right now. All right, so now let's discuss this pattern change. And we'll start by taking a look at just what's happening out there right now. This is about the time the video is getting uploaded, our surface map. And we are still dealing with high pressure over the northeast. That has led to just a little bit of some cold air damming left over across the southeast. So kind of the nicest conditions in the country, I would say, is in this region this afternoon, as we do have sinking air from that high pressure, but also relatively cool air. Maybe not as cool as you would expect this time of year, but cool compared to the rest of the country, kind of east of the Rockies here. Now, where things are not so cool is right here into the middle of the country. We're getting big time southerly flow out of the Gulf of Mexico here due to this high pressure combined with this low pressure, kind of tag teaming. And our warm conveyor belt is really off the charts for this time of year. You'll notice how these isobars are very clustered together. We have very strong flow out of the Gulf here over states like Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, well up into the Great Lakes. And again, that feeding into this warm front here that is bringing some precipitation through portions of the Great Lakes and eastern Canada this afternoon. Now, obviously, the other big story is this low pressure. This low pressure responsible for big time mountain snow and severe weather potential going into really starting today, but especially tomorrow. The wind energy with that low pressure combined with this warm conveyor belt and dry conveyor belt on the backside of this low is really going to enhance severe weather risk over portions of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas for our Wednesday afternoon and evening. Now, currently, we'll start in the east and work westbound. Over the east, not a lot happening. We do still have a fire threat over portions of the northeast, but we are getting some rain. Again, I mentioned this warm front up here a couple times. I'll kind of draw it for you again. So this is a part of that warm conveyor belt, again, coming out of the Gulf, bringing very warm temperatures. And it is also leading to a little bit of rainfall. So actually a pretty good amount of rain here over portions of Ontario and Quebec this Wednesday. As for the lower 48, some of those showers even working into the Pittsburgh area. We've got a pretty good amount of showers back up into the northern tier of the Dakotas and Minnesota. And on the south side, south of that warm front where we kind of lose that lift but have that big time moist and warm advection, we've got a wind threat and a fire threat. Again, very windy this afternoon as this pressure gradient increases due to this very warm air over the plains and this very cold air over the Rockies. That creates, again, a very tight pressure gradient that picks up those winds. And that, again, leading to these wind advisories in beige and red flag warnings in those pink colors. So multiple hazards on the table in the plains today, even if you don't see severe weather. Now, the Rockies, the story is the cold side of the storm. We've got big time snow falling through Colorado, the mountains of Wyoming, back into Utah, and into portions of the Four Corners, picking up picking up snow in terms of feet rather than inches. Into some of these higher terrains. So it's rocking and rolling, folks. We had a bit of a lull, but the weather pattern is definitely picking back up as you would kind of expect a little bit more this time of year. And again, the snow is not the only concern here. Severe weather is going to also be a concern today, a marginal risk of severe weather. Now, I think today is a very conditional threat. We will have a couple of isolated storms, but the storms that do form could become strong to severe here. And that does include a bit of kind of a wind threat and a hail threat. So again, wind there in the brown colors on your map today, and then hail as well, also going to be a threat basically in the same areas. Tornado threat is relatively low today, but that changes going into tomorrow. Notice this big time slight risk from Dallas, Texas, all the way up into Kansas City, St. Joseph, Missouri, even into the extreme southwestern portions of Iowa in that slight risk. But the marginal risk, I mean, that stretches from Madison, Wisconsin, La Crosse, all the way back down to Austin. So a big section of the country tomorrow that is under the gun for severe weather, and that does include a tornado threat, a 5% chance of a tornado within a 25-mile radius for big-time populated areas, including Wichita, Oklahoma City, and then up even into the Emporia area of Kansas. But that 2% area from Dallas, again, all the way up into extreme southwestern Iowa. So severe weather will be a threat. It's something we need to watch, something we need to monitor, and something we cannot let our guard down with. All right, let's go ahead and time this out for you over the eastern half of the country. Let me back this up because I am well too far ahead into the future. So this afternoon, again, this warm front is going to be crossing through the northeast as well, and that should lead to just enough lift over New York State and even into much of New England that we do see the potential for some rainfall this afternoon. And again, we could use it basically anywhere in the country, so that will definitely be good to see. Hopefully that rain gets as far south as Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. Again, we could use it as we have had those wildfire concerns. And that gets us into overnight tonight. This is about 2 a.m. into tomorrow. And you'll notice at the same time this is happening, we're getting this ejection of low pressure across the northern Great Plains. Here's the cold front and really the dry line as well with that. That is going to begin to move on through. And with that, overnight tonight, a couple storms could fire up. Again, a very minimal severe threat today, but a threat nonetheless. And then we're waking up Wednesday morning here. Still some rain showers into the northeast, some rain showers up into northern Minnesota on kind of the northern side of our low pressure there. But relatively calm start to Wednesday. It's Wednesday afternoon and evening that things go downhill pretty quickly here as we get a new low pressure to kind of form here. And this is going to be the one that really leads to some severe weather potential. So here we go. This is about 4 or 5 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. Big time rain here on the northern side of this low pressure, kind of along our warm front axis. So not expecting too much severe weather out of this big blob of convection, but kind of on the edges of this through Iowa into northern Missouri. That's where we could see some severe weather, as again, we're getting a little bit more of that moist inflow into these storms. But the bigger threat is going to come Wednesday evening on the southern tail end of this low pressure, kind of along our cold front axis. This is where more of a supercellular mode will be possible down into Kansas, Oklahoma, and back towards the Red River Valley into Texas with a couple of severe storms possible. And even note some rain coming down out of the Gulf into Louisiana and Texas. That's going to be nice for you folks. Haven't seen a lot of rain there in a while. You'll need it for sure. And again, that just goes to show you how powerful this flow out of the Gulf is. I mean, we don't even have that much lift down here from the front. This is really just a lot of moisture that is, only using a little bit of lift to form here into some precipitation. So things get very active. Again, this is Wednesday evening. Overnight Wednesday, this turns into a more linear mode of severe weather. So at this point, a wind threat and a QLCS tornado threat will take over as the primary threats from Texas all the way up through St. Louis into portions of Illinois there, and then rain to the north of that. Now, while all that's happening, we remain dry in the east, at least east of the Appalachia chain, and unfortunately, we're going to see some frontalysis with this, meaning the front's going to weaken, and it's not really going to make it to us, again, east of the Appalachia chain, and we could use it. We really need the rain, so a little unfortunate there. All right, diving into the severe weather threat just a little bit more. Again, just wanted to time out the kind of core of the threat here. Tomorrow afternoon and evening, here comes that front. And then here comes that explosion of cellular activity. And again, any of these kind of more discrete cells will have the potential of producing a tornado or two, but I think the real tornado threat is going to come right around here. This is near sunset, a couple hours before sunset. And you'll notice how we get some more of this forcing that is just enough to kind of create a couple of cells that form here from Kansas back down into Oklahoma. This is where we will have the most spin in the atmosphere, and this is where the storm mode will be the most discrete, I think, as we kind of have some of these wind vectors running a little more perpendicular to the front, which will help keep that outflow in front of these storms and prevent an immediate transition to a linear mode, at least hypothetically. Now, sometimes things change in the short range, but that's the current thought there. And then again, eventually turning linear during the overnight hours, and that's when the tornado threat should die down pretty significantly. All right, out west, again, it's a snowfall story out here this afternoon. Heavy snow from Wyoming back into Utah, Colorado. That continues as this first round of low pressure pulls off this evening. Again, continuing to snow in those higher elevations. And that'll be a continuing story through the overnight into tomorrow, letting up a little bit by Wednesday afternoon, at least through Wyoming, maybe picking up for the higher terrains in Colorado, especially those westward facing slopes as we get kind of some of that Pacific moisture to slam into the side of those mountains and create some upslope flow. But that's just the beginning of it, because you'll notice what's happening behind it by the time we get into Wednesday and Thursday. Another big trough, another big storm system. And this is the pattern to start November, folks. It's going to be round after round after round of kind of exciting weather here, whether that be snow or severe weather. It kind of really depends on your location. But for the Rocky Mountains, it's going to be snow and snowing for a while. Now, the Rockies are not the only place I'm watching for snowfall. In fact, a little bit of a sneaky kind of setup potentially showing up in some of our models. So let's pick up kind of where we left off here. This is Wednesday evening and overnight Wednesday. Here's our storm system. Here's our kind of squall line to the south. Here's our warm front to the north. And watch what happens here on the backside of this. Now, obviously, that front itself going to bring some big time rain to some folks. But on the backside, we get a quick burst of precipitation. And this changes to some very heavy, wet snow through portions of Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and the UP of Michigan by Thursday afternoon on some of our models. Now, at this point, our low pressure is really pulling up into Canada. So on the south side, rain is going to be much harder to come by, at least in big quantities from, we'll say, Memphis southbound. But the Ohio River Valley up into the Midwest, still enough forcing and lifting here that we're likely to see some precipitation for our Halloween afternoon. Again, including some snowfall here over portions of the country. Now, we get this into Thursday afternoon and Halloween evening, about time for trick-or-treating. Again, this low-pressure system is booking it. It's pulling north pretty quickly up into Canada and could bring a pretty good winter storm for those folks well into interior Canada, but just a couple leftover showers and maybe a couple rumbles of thunder as whatever's left of this front slowly crosses the Ohio and Tennessee River Valley before we get into Friday afternoon, and at this point, high pressure really takes over and rainfall becomes much harder to come by as that front weakens pretty significantly, at least for us in the United States. Now, very quickly into the nitty-gritty of the meteorology here, just because it's great practice for me, and I think some of you folks like it. You're probably wondering, well, if I back this up and we talk about that snow a little bit more, well, what's causing this random quick burst of precipitation on the backside of this low pressure? You know, why did that happen? Why is that kind of just showing up out of the middle of nowhere? Well, it all has to do with our 500 millibar wind here, or our jet stream in the mid-levels, and basically what's happening here is we've got this big upper-level trough right into the northern plains around this time, and you'll notice this kind of band of stronger winds. This is a jet streak showing up on our models, and what we can do as meteorologists is kind of divide these jet streaks into 4 quadrants. And the 2 quadrants I'm going to circle right now are the quadrants that very often lead to divergence, or just air that is separating at the upper levels, which creates convergence at the surface. That creates lift, and oftentimes that creates precipitation. So if I just leave the one circle on here, kind of watch where that is, and then if I overlap that with our precipitation, I mean, that's about as good as it gets, folks. So that's kind of why we're seeing this last second uptick in a snow potential. It's not that the air is colder than we thought. It's just that we get this kind of back end jet streak behind the low pressure system. That's creating enough lift that we could absolutely get some snowfall. Now, how much snow are we talking here? Well, this is a wonderful website that I'm going to start to use a lot more that I just recently learned about. But this is showing the mean snowfall between our national blend of models for the continental United States. And we'll kind of move this ahead. So this is 8 a.m. Thursday. This is 8 a.m. Halloween. And again, if I didn't mention Halloween snow, isn't that cool? We'll move this ahead into the afternoon hours and look at this area of snow showing up. I mean, this is showing 2 to 3 inches of snowfall in kind of these blue areas through northern Minnesota and eventually even getting into northern Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan. So definitely going to see some snow here from Duluth up to Eli. Marquette could see some snow out of this. Park Falls, Ashland, Moose Lake, Sandstone, definitely looking at some snowfall potential for that Halloween afternoon and even into the evening hours before that band of snow kind of pulls on out of here and up into Canada by Friday. So kind of just some exciting stuff there. You know, it wasn't really looking super snowy a while ago, but now looking at the potential for some snow out of that storm system. Now we'll move this even further ahead into time and just to show you another big storm system possible in the future. So let me back this up. Actually, let me refresh the page so it loads nice and pretty for us. All right, so here's our first storm system. That's the one we just talked about. That crosses. We get into this weekend, drying out again east of the Mississippi. But another big storm comes out of the Rockies and another shot of severe weather, heavy rainfall later this weekend into early next week, and big time Rocky Mountain snow is kind of what is on the docket here with that one. And then this could last a while, folks. Again, look at this wave after wave after wave of low pressure that kind of pulls up through the country. And again, it brings severe weather with it, heavy rainfall and big time mountain snow. And then look at this 10 days out, another big storm system. And I think in that 10-day time frame, we may finally get one of these storms that kind of crosses the Mississippi and maybe gets to the East Coast. But until then, folks, I mean, we are struggling for any sort of significant rainfall east of the Appalachia chain. This is the next 10 days blend of models, nothing really from Jersey all the way south into the Florida Panhandle. But where we are seeing a lot of rain is out into the plains, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and up into Missouri and Iowa, and even into the Great Lakes, again, as round after round of storm systems cross this region and bring some big time lift and precipitation, plus that severe weather threat as well. Now, again, like I said, this is going to continue for the long haul, 6 to 10 days from now. This is your first week of November, folks. It stays warm east of the Rockies, stays cool over the Rockies as this pattern really struggles to budge in the long term. The good news, though, again, will increase precipitation chances in places that really need it through Texas, Oklahoma, even out into the Rockies again and up into the Midwest. Where it's not good is along the eastern seaboard, from Massachusetts back down into the Carolinas, where we could, again, desperately use some pretty good rainfall, and we are struggling to find it anywhere east of the Appalachia chain. Alrighty, folks. Again, I know that was kind of, I was firing on all cylinders, kind of ran through that pretty quickly, but hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you found some use in it. If you did, again, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video, comment, let me know where you're watching from. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask those as well. Alrighty, folks, have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you all tomorrow.